So I'm Zach, also known in some circles as Fart Barber online. If you're looking around, you see that name. That's me. So I'm neither of the people on the first slide. I haven't given actually a 101 talk in years, and I thought we were doing this much later in the day. So you are getting the best talk imaginable right now. So let's see. So that's the first slide. So Lionel Richie, Jr. Was born June 20th, 1949, the greatest American singer. I can't even do this. Hold on, I'm going to the next slide. Anyways, about Fools. I know more about Fools than I knew Lionel Richie, so you're going to just have to deal with it. I know that you want to hear about him. Okay, so we're a group called Fraternal Order of Locksport. We're in South Central Indiana. We got members all over the place, but we're the thickest in Indiana. Just a social group. We meet up, pick locks for fun. We host a lot of lockpicking villages, different conferences, so we can do anything from a single table to a full room. We also have like teaching components where I can go into like your corporate event and help you spend down your budget and give you guys a really fun time in the process. So there's the only sales plug. You're going to hear the whole thing. So yeah, Lionel Richie was a member of the Commodores. I'm really a big fan of the Commodores, actually. They're a lot of fun. He gets confused a lot with Ray Parker Jr. I don't know why. He's the much better of the two. He sold more than 100 million records worldwide, making him the best-selling artist of all time. Hello. Anyways, let's talk about the law before we get into lockpicking. There are a lot of angry, cranky laws in Tennessee about lockpicking. I'm not going to get into all of them. Just be smart and do what you're supposed to do. Committing a crime is illegal, of course. Picking your own locks is legal in most places. So here, I don't think anybody's really going to hassle you of the law if they see you picking your own locks or somebody's locks that you have permission to. The other thing is if if you're clearly into lockpicking and you say, oh, I'm part of this club and I go and I do this for fun and competition and anything that you're remotely interested in when it comes to dealing with law enforcement and you're happy about, their eyes will glaze over and go nerd, and then they'll move on, in my experience. So, yeah, and like with everything, having the tools and knowing how to use them doesn't make you a criminal, just like with a gun. Doesn't make you a criminal for having one or knowing about them. Here's the law, but I think... That's not Lionel Richie. That's Ray Parker Jr. Get out of here. And then... No, it's still Ray Parker Jr. Okay, hold on. God, you really had a lot of facts in here about him. Okay, so what does the TSA think about lockpicks? Well, picks and tools and checked luggage are never a problem. We've been flying before where I've had my checked bags full of the basic lockpick sets that come in the tubes. Looks like a rick of dynamite when they're all together in a duffel bag. Goes through the scanner, and the TSA agent looks at the screen and looks at me and looks at the screen and looks at me and runs over and opens the bag and reaches in. This is too much hand sanitizer, sir. So he was clearly not even interested in any of the tubes with the lockpicks in them. I know Das Man went internationally. He went to South Korea, and the guy pulls out his pick set, looks at him and goes, oh, ear cleaning tools, and is holding him. Yeah, sure, and oh well. Yeah, it's not TSA, but my courthouse. Yeah, so I go lots of places with lockpicks, and nobody seems to care. I go to my local courthouse, and I show them that I've got lockpicks, and I put them in the tray, and then they don't want to give them back to me afterwards. I still don't understand what that's about. Tools less than 7 inches long are now allowed in your carry-on. So lockpicks are safe. Locksmithing tools may now board at this time. So how does a pin tumbler lock work? I talk about this all day long, so hopefully I don't freeze like a deer telling it on a stage to 10 people. Pin stacks prevent the plug from turning inside the housing. So the top illustration is the pin stacks without the key in the lock. You notice that they are sitting in between the plug and the housing of the lock. So their presence there keeps the lock from being able to turn and you getting into the lock. The keys align, the key aligns the pin stack. So the lower illustration is what's happening when you put the key in the lock. It creates this line in between the plug and the housing of the lock that's called the shear line. And then the lock turns. So, anyways, so the way that they're all like the pin stacks are classified, the blue pins are the driver pins, and the bottom pins are the key pins. So the bottom pins are called the key pins because they make direct contact with the key, and the driver pins are the internal pins that help form that shear line, and those are typically known as the driver pins. I usually say upper and lower. So Richie graduated from Joliet Township High School. What is that? Okay, I don't know what East Campus is. Okay. So your first lockpick set, and this is representative of what's in our basic set. So if you get a chance or you have the inclination, please buy a basic set from us. We also have ones with slightly better handles. That was a mistake, so they're known as our basic mistake set. $5 more. So your first lockpick set has a short hook, a half diamond, a snake, and a ball pick with a tensioner. Really, you're going to use two tools when picking a lock. Well, pretty much most any lock, you're going to use your tension wrench, and you're going to use your half diamond. That's what I've been showing people, like I showed them all day, how to do the basic raking technique with the half diamond. Ways to open a pin tumbler lock: using the key, brute force, manipulation, bumping, picking, impressioning. There's certain bypass attacks that work. Opening the lock by avoiding the mechanism. So shimming and things like that. You can do that on combo locks using a Coke can. You can shim the shackle on one side, or some have pops on both sides. You can get in there and just pop the lock open. Decoding attacks. So I've seen decoding attacks on combo locks and things like that where you're looking for feedback in the shackle while you're using the dial. Master in recent time has put in internal measures to counter that. Gives very little feedback, and you're not able to decode like you can on older master locks, like master combos and things like that. I don't know much about it. So the best way to find how many pins your lock has before you start picking is take that half diamond, turn it upside down, and if you notice in the illustration there, we've got the pick all the way in the lock. It's upside down. You push all the pins up, and as you pull out, you listen for the clicks. And so I usually hold a lock up to my ear with the pick upside down, pull it out, I'm listening to each click. So 1 click, 2 click, 3 click, 4 click, okay, 4-pin lock. And so it's a good way to size up any lock. It's kind of fun in a door, the hollow doors that have deadbolts on them. When you do that, it reverberates. It makes a nice clicking noise and scares anybody that's on the other side. So in a perfect world, all parts would be 100% identical. I'm going to get into why lock picking works, especially the raking technique. In the real world, the holes that are drilled into the plugs are not perfectly aligned. So, and I tell everyone, if you were to see a lock up and down, look at the pin stack straight up and down, nothing would be in perfect alignment. And so here's a good representation of that. They're just barely off from one another. Okay, I thought I had an explanation about offset. So anyways, this imperfection in the manufacturing process makes it so when you maintain constant tension on the lock and you rake it, some pins bind before other pins do. This is called the offset pattern. And so you see me zip open a master lock really quick when I'm over there showing you how to pick a lock. It's really because I'm familiar more with the lock than I am good at lock picking. So I know on those brass and silver master locks that the offset pattern's relatively the same. I'm going to scrub the third pin, the second pin, the fourth pin, and the first pin pretty much on all of those because they were all made in the same time on a machine with pretty tight tolerance, probably by the same guy for 2 years, just going So the offset on all of it's about the same. And as you get familiar with locks, you're going to find locks that were all made, by the same maker during the same time. The offset pattern's going to be somewhat similar. Tension technique, use very, very light pressure. So the best way I can explain it, as I've explained to a lot of people so far, just rest your finger on that tension wrench and wait for it to turn. If you're depressing it to the point where you've got an indention on your finger or you're bending the tensioner, you're turning it too tight. Not in all cases. There are some locks that require a little bit of muscle, but they're not on that table today. And if you want, maybe I can find some examples of things that take a little bit more muscle to get into them. So you're maintaining constant light pressure on the lock. You rake or scrub the pins. You just brush the top of the pins at first. This is good. I need to remember when I'm talking to people. Don't push them all the way up because you're probably oversetting them if you just go in there and start pushing up as high as you can on the pins. You want to get in there, and so with the raking method, you want to get in and just lightly rake a little bit more each time, push up, because as you do that, you're making sets because they're all setting at different depths. And remember, relax. I tell people, don't think about picking the lock. Talk about something else, think about something else, which is why I tell stupid stories. And I remember the two of you, I told you, I tell you stupid stories so you'll pick a lock. And well, in your case, it didn't work. I got up and walked away, and you guys both picked your lock. Sorry. So I think this is a video. This is a demonstration of the raking technique. Oh, okay, now I got a little wheel. Okay. I don't know what's happening for us. You don't think the video will play? All right, sweet. Well, the slides aren't playing. I think it is broken. Okay. Well, remember picking a Huh? I will. I'm going to. Oh no, I don't actually have any like general audience friendly material when I'm on. Anyways, remember picking a lock is damaging to the lock. You can and will break a lock. I have locks frequently on the table that decide I'm done and things will fall out of them, or they will just not pick anymore. They'll be in an open state, or you lose pins or things like that. And I mean, think about it. You have two bits of metal. You are in there jimmying around with something that's supposed to be the same every time. Like the key. Okay, cool. I'm gonna skip the video because it might not play. Only pick locks that you have permission to pick, and don't practice on locks that are currently in use. Like, I set lockpicking down for a while. Fast forward like 10 years, I decide I'm gonna get into it again. First thing I do is pick my apartment door, and I picked it backwards, and there's a problem with that particular cheap-ass lock because there's this groove cut in the keyway, and all the pins jumped pretty much out of the lock, jammed the lock backwards. So now, yeah, it was the best because my apartment was also locked, and I had to explain to the landlord now why I can't get in my own apartment, and she's gonna have to pay somebody to drill it out because I didn't have any of the tools yet. Wonderful time. I didn't get the deposit back either. But I was also making lock picks in the back room with this like bench grinder, which is how Fools started for the most part. And once she saw that I had a full scale like pick making operation back there, I had to get out anyways. So, oh well. So another method, and as you once you get tired of raking, you're going to want to move on to other things. This works incredibly well on locks with security features, is pin at a time. So the short hook that comes in your kit is a great exploratory tool. It allows you to get in there and push every pin. Now, you're maintaining slight pressure on the lock. You're going and you're testing each pin, pin by pin. And this is really good at teaching you what feedback with a tension wrench is like. And so in this demonstration, you know, they're picking pin at a time, they're maintaining pressure, and the last one's ready to bind in the housing out, and then you feel it bind, and at the same time you'll feel a little give with your tensioner. So when I say that the tensioner's, you know, not only spins the lock, it's there as a communication tool between you and the lock. It's letting you know when you've got successful sets. Slowing down, relaxing, and turning your brain off and using it for what it is the trick. So, little pandas. I like that. I would teach a panda how to pick a lock. I don't think he would listen, but I'd give it my best shot. I want to hug the screen. Okay. So let's talk about security pins. So as you get into lockpicking and you want more of a challenge, you'll want to pick up some locks with security features in them. And so typically lock manufacturers won't advertise on the outside of the box spool pins, serrated pins, mushroom pins. Like they're going to, and Master cracks me up because they have a line where they say security feature, but it's in quotes. And so I don't know. Anyways, Some have security features, and that typically means a single spool pin or a couple spool pins. There's, like Best, they don't mess around. If they say that they have security pins in there, typically everyone is a security pin of one form or another, or serrated pins. So the top are demonstrative of spool and mushroom pins. The one on the right is a mushroom pin, where it's got that funky shape where it's pretty thick at the top, and then it comes down and then has that lip. And then the spool pins, they look exactly like they sound, like a spool. The bottom ones, those are serrated. They've got these notches that constantly grab on the keyway. So as you're picking them, it's giving you constant feedback. The tensioner's always doing one of these numbers, and you're feeling the click, 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 and you really don't know when you're making a set. And these are driver pins, by the way. These aren't going to be visibly seen. You're not going to look in there and go, aha, it's got spool or serrated pins. You're only going to know that by doing pin at a time in the lock. You won't know until you pick it. And so, yeah, it gives me fun giggles when I watch TV and movies and see, they're looking at it and they know for some reason exactly what's on the inside. So tensioners, there's all kinds of tensioners out there. So in our basic set, we've got the counter twist ones, so your finger's not resting on a sharp edge the whole time. Once I started using those, I can't go back to just the straight piece of metal. It really bothers me. I'm pretty good at twisting up a really nice tensioner with a paper clip, and you don't need anything fancy. Picking in general isn't fancy. Like, you can use anything if you've got the imagination. So as you pick, your collection of tools will grow. There's different stiffnesses for the tension wrenches. I use the same tension wrench for all of them. Smaller locks, however, so like little luggage locks, diary keys. You guys you guys don't have diaries. You guys type everything, right? Like, you don't write in a book. Okay. Anyways, yeah, they make small like tensioners. There are specific tensioners, and I don't think, no, we don't have a picture of it. Anyways, wafer locks. Wafer locks sometimes will have wafers on both sides of the lock, so you got to use a ball pick to get to both stacks. They make a tensioner that holds the lock on both sides, so that way you can get your pick in between them and manipulate both pin stacks. So those are really handy. There might, later on in the slide deck, I don't know how this has been modified, aside from the Lionel Richie stuff, we might have some representation in there of that. So let me move on. So lockpicking, common sources for tensioner materials are fold-up laundry baskets. These things are great, and just as soon as I figured out they were useful for sourcing the steel out of them, Walmart stopped carrying them, and now they just have plastic shit. Sorry. Windshield wiper blades are great. Street sweeper bristles also work. They are the correct thickness to make tensioners out of. So, on street cleaning day, you walk behind and pick some of the bristles up off the road, or take your snips and go get them yourself. You pay taxes. So don't be afraid to make your own picks. I wasn't, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I went to the pawn shop and bought this grinder, and we started making picks in my back room. As you see, like the ones down here, the yellow one is made out of a hacksaw blade. Those are perfect. I like hacksaw blade picks. They have a really distinct feel to them. They're not like normal manufactured picks. They have a really nice hardness to them. Some can be rather thick, so they're not. You can pick like a padlock and stuff with them, or you can shave them down a little, thin them out. So you can temper the metal. You heat it up to a cherry red over a range. Oil quench and vegetable oil, and then they're tempered and they're ready to pick, and they're not going to poop out on you too quick. Yeah. Oh, my poor kitchen when I got into all this stuff the first time. I can't cook, so everything was just lock picks, gross pots full. Oh God, it was horrible. So here's a wafer lock. So I talked a little bit about a wafer lock. You see these a lot on desks, file cabinets, things like that. They allude to the fact that there's some sense of security here, but they're very easy to open. You can make short work out of a wafer lock just with some paper clips, which I do frequently at work because everybody loses their keys. So that's the ordinary one, single stack to one side. The one next to it, slightly higher quality. That indention in the middle is like there's a groove cut into the side of the key, and there's typically bitting on both sides. So it's manipulating wafers on both sides of the lock, so it can turn and spin. So here's a look at what a wafer plug looks like. There's these grooves cut into the side of the lock, and they allow the wafers to move up and down. And so when you put the key in there, they're actually pushing in the wafers, so there's no obstruction there outside of the plug, and it allows it to turn. So when picking like a double-sided wafer lock, that's what the ball pick is good for. They also make another one with a ball on top of it called the Snowman. It's a really cute-looking pick. It makes picking a lot easier. Hello there.
Go ahead.
Okay, carry on. If you want to chime in, let me know. Smack my butt? Okay. All right, anyways. The hook works well since it has a flat surface to engage the flat wafer surfaces. Now, one thing to note about wafer locks is if you get too zealous or it's an old lock, you can break the wafers and obstruct. And so, like when we have the jagged extraction tool in some of our other sets, like the Pro 20 set, that's used for getting crap out of those locks because they will frequently break. The good thing about wafer locks is even if you break one of the wafers, it's still a functional lock if you're not obstructing the keyway. I say that now, but like I can recall lots of locks that have just completely self-destructed. So wafers can come in padlocks too. There's an old Illinois lock. They're good. I don't have an opinion one way or the other on them. I find when they're not on a cabinet and they're a padlock, they're a pain in the ass to pick. Do you like them, Sporus? No? Me neither. Get away for oh, hey, look, there's one of those tensioners I was talking about. So that is holding the lock in two areas so you can get in with your pick and manipulate both sides of the lock. So you're able to manipulate both sets of wafers and get into that lock. You can use an ordinary tensioner in the middle of the lock. It is a pain in the butt, but it works. Our dual set, our dual challenge, are those double-sided? I can't remember.
They're single-sided, I'm pretty sure.
Huh? Yes? Yes.
Pretty sure, I thought it was single-sided.
Well, no, you remember you had your double-side tool yesterday.
I did, but I didn't think it was actually used.
I don't know.
I'll get back with you.
Yeah, get back with me. He remembers about as little of last night as I do.
I still opened it before you did, though.
Oh yeah, you did. Anyways, yeah, we're not going to get into stories now. Let's move on to snap guns, shall we? So I was saying that our dual set has wafer locks on them. So if you want to go over there and pick a good representation of a wafer lock, that's going to be it. Use the single tensioner because I don't have any of the double tensioners, and you'll know what it's like to be irritated while trying to pick a wafer lock with a normal tensioner. All right, vindicated. Get back over here. The couch is getting cold. Anyways, the snap guns. They're good. They got a blade on the end. When you pull the trigger, the blade moves up and down. It allows you to snap the pins up and down very quick while you maintain pressure on the lock. So when you watch the cop shows and they go over to the door and they kind of like touch the lock with the snap gun and it opens up and they don't have a tensioner, that's all poop. I mean, you gotta maintain tension while you're snapping it. They just move those pins above the shear line. And you just bounce them up and down until eventually you feel it go. I don't use the snap gun a lot. Sometimes I'll demo it just so I can sell some. But they're noisy. They depending on where you get them. So there's a lot of really cheap crap right now that you can buy that break on the inside. And we went to great lengths to at least find a good vendor that's selling stuff with metal internals. A lot of them have like plastic. There we go. Did you put a scope on that? Anyways, so yeah, we're going to have add-ons next year for the pick gun, like laser sights, bump stocks, things like that. So get ready. It's going to be a fun time. The other thing is they're not discreet in the least bit. Like they're one of those tools that look menacing when somebody's looking in your bag and going, oh, super criminal. But you're not going anywhere quietly with that thing. If you're trying to get in with somebody on the other side, yeah, there's a woodpecker at my door. Like, I don't know what's going on. Huh?
Better than the electric
Oh
ones.
yeah. Yeah, no, and so there's electric bump guns too that are loud. So now it just sounds like you're drilling the lock out. So bumping, I've not actually demoed bumping yet. This weekend, I can do that here a little later. It's an old locksmith's trick. It's where, and we've seen it a lot. Actually, I've been really humored by the news that it made when it came back like a few years ago. Oh, scary way criminals are getting into your house. It works on a lot of locks, and so there's companies that have gone to great lengths and high security locks to make it quote unquote bump proof. You can still open them. You can still open them with bumping, and there are some really good attempts that make it a lot harder to bump. Let's get into why bumping works. So here we've got a key. The depths are all cut the same on every location. It's going into the lock, and as you put it in the lock, you hit it with what's known as a bump hammer. The force of it going in the lock is just enough to bump the pins right above the shear line, and then the lock turns. There's a certain amount of finesse that goes into bumping a lock, so it's not like you're just going to go home and do it right away. It's going to be irritating, and you're going to swear it doesn't work, but it does. Just give it time, just like with picking. Oh yeah, is that all we have on bumping? Okay. And now I fat-fingered the directional button here. Come on. We're going to get into another style of lock. As soon as it goes, okay, the Kwikset Smart Key. So Kwikset is known for making cheap and easy to pick locks. So if you got a Kwikset at your house, don't fear. I mean, it's, suddenly knowing that it's cheap and it's easy to pick isn't going to make it any likelier that you're going to get broken into. And besides, anybody with half of an inclination to break into your house is not going to pick the lock. They're going to break the window and get your stereo or whatever that way. And really, if the bad guys in your neighborhood are picking locks because they want to get into your house quiet, they probably have no interest in any of your electronics and they're looking for you. So you've got bigger problems on your hands. So the Kwikset Smart Key was them, trying to regain a little bit of cred in the industry. Oh, we make easy to pick locks that are of reasonable or subpar reliability. They also address the bumping problem with a wafer system. So wafers self-destruct when bumped or when picked aggressively. And I guess having the lock break down and them not being able to get in is a nice feature if they're trying to get in. It also allows instant rekeying to the end user. So there's a little slot cut into the side of the keyway there. With a special tool and key, you can get in there and rekey it for a new combination right away. It's really convenient. So landlords, I did contract work for a housing program for a while, and I encouraged my landlords to get these because it was reasonable security. They were inexpensive for what they were, and you could instantly rekey them. And so they didn't have to go and then get a locksmith to change the locks out when they evicted somebody, which happened all the time. So, and most times they didn't even rekey them, and that's why theft was so rampant in the area where I administered this program. They just weren't rekeying any of the locks because they were too cheap, and people were breaking in constantly using keys. So I helped educate a little bit on the smart key. So there's ways of picking the smart key. Our friend Shane, also known as Valen X from Fools, invented the smart key decoder. It allows independent decoding of each wafer, and the key can be cut by code after you've got the information from the wafers. And so it's this little tool over here with the flag on the end. You put it in line with a modified Kwikset key, and you can go in, spin it, and the flag brushes up against the side of the wafers and allows you to count it allows you to count the vibrations in the side of the wafer and allows you to just write them down, decode it, and then make your own key to get in. I've not seen any of these being sold anywhere. Hey Sports, are you aware of these being sold at all? Yeah, the decoder. Okay. I'd really like to start selling some of those. So I guess I got into the operation here. So, yeah, that about covers it. So yeah, that's what a decoder chart for the smart key looks like. Um, yeah, the amount of ridges correspond with where the depth on the key is, so it makes it really easy to go and cut your own at some point if you really need to. Um, so the classic combo lock. So your school has like combo locks, right? Like okay, there we go. Okay, I'm not so out of touch. My daughter will tell me that I am, but I know I'm not. Yeah, so you see a lot of these, and they serve their purpose, which is keep most like unambitious kids out of your locker and stealing your things. But with a Coke can, you can cut a shim, put it to the side where you know that the pop on the shackle is, and then you push the padlock up, and then bring the shim down with it, and it opens right up. And so if you guys happen into a Coke can or something, we've got some of those locks on the table. Don't be shy. Cut something up and try it out. I don't have any aluminum, but if you bring me some, I'll be more than happy to demonstrate the shimming method with you guys. There's also Chinese spring steel shims that you can buy in bulk. They're okay. They're good for a couple of times, and then they self-destruct. It's just easier to use the Coke can, which is why I don't really carry any for sale, because I mean anybody can do this. So after you fold it up, you put it on the side of the shackle. Push the lock in and the shim down with it, and that's usually enough to get into most of those. Now, Master does have the anti-shim padlocks and combo locks. They've got either plastic or steel up around the shackle to keep you from getting in there. It makes it harder. If you get creative, you can make your own tools to still pop them open. The other thing that they do, and I don't know if we mention it. Here we go. So here's a demonstration of how shimming a padlock works. And for these, the spring steel shims work really well. And so this is a demonstration on how they're working. You orient them away from the the locking mechanism, so you can get them all the way down down into the shackle, and then you turn and twist them, and that pushes the mechanism out of the way that's holding the shackle in place. And then you pull, and it opens up. Another form of shim protection is ball bearings instead of just a metal latch. These are very effective in blocking shim attacks, and will just chew the shim up and leave a lot of schmutz all over the place. And if you don't tidy up afterwards, somebody knows that you've been screwing at their locks. So there's a demonstration of the ball bearing being locked into place against the shackle, and then the lock unlocked and the ball bearing falling back free floating. So combination locks. Good way to try to get into them is to pull the shackle away from the lock and start turning the furthest dial. Feel for the dial to get loose, move on to the next inner dial, and repeat. And so that is how all of those locks are done when you're looking at it. You know quite a bit about TSA locks.
Yeah, TSA locks are universally crap because let me stand up.
Yeah.
Well, any lock that is keyed standard, it's going to be an issue because someone can eventually take apart the lock and reverse engineer it and figure out what's going on. TSA locks is incredibly easy because, you can just go out and buy like a $3 lock from Walmart, take it apart, and figure out the keying. People made a big deal about the photos leaking online, but truthfully, that really wasn't that big a deal because you could always just take apart the lock. The same thing applies to a lot of elevator independent service mode locks, but I carry around a keychain that has a whole bunch of TSA locks that we reproduced, and I'm trying to cover my own key because people will say, "Oh, you showed your own key on film." You can break through my window, so I'm not that concerned. But I have a set of TSA keys that I've recreated basically by just ripping apart TSA locks, figuring out what the pinning / the wafering is, and filing down to have one that's right, and then reproducing it with my cheapo key maker. Now, the biggest problem is finding a key blank. Number 007 is like the most common TSA lock. Unfortunately, I found a proper blank for that. But it's also, I've yet to encounter a TSA lock besides the 006, which only, I think, Avis designed it for them, and I think only Rimowa Luggage uses. Everything but the 006 has been super easy to pick. So, and even the 006 we ended up getting. So, And the 3D printed thing, as far as I know, sometimes the 3D printed keys that people have been making have worked, sometimes they haven't. As far as I know, no one's ever made a 006 3D printed one that actually functions. That's what I know of them. A quick shot on it.
Thank you. Awesome. I like having subject matter experts sitting right on the couch. Oh, God, now I need a subject matter expert for this microphone. There we go. All right. Sorry to make you get up. Anyways, the other thing about, like, luggage combo locks, like, if it locks and keeps the zipper from moving, then it keeps the guy at the baggage, like, behind the baggage claim from getting into your stuff. If I really want something in your suitcase, good. I'm glad you put a lock on something that's mainly comprised of plastic and fabric. Let me get my knife. Like, then there we go. So it can sometimes be decoded by sight, looking at the shaft of the dials. Shims or knife can also be used, so getting in there by the dials and feeling where it catches. And they make knives for it, or you can just take like a busted pick and, like, shave down a really fine tip that then also can, like, stab. Let's see, I think we covered that. So, master pinning. Let's get into something that I don't know too much about, shall we? Master pinning are basically small sub pins in between the driver and the key pin that give those pin stacks a different level of elevation, so somebody with a management key can get in there and operate the lock. Wait, was it Deviant wrote about the what book is that he wrote about the master keying system? Keys of the Kingdom, or
I'm not sure which particular book. I know he has 2 books out, one on basic
was that
and one more advanced.
Keys of the Kingdom? Okay, yeah. So Deviant wrote a book all about master pinning and things like that. Good book. I like it. And what happened? Why are we all the way back over here now? Oh my goodness. Impressioning. Many types of impressioning exist. We have foil impressioning kits, I think, over at our table. It involves getting feedback from the pins in the lock and then modifying a blank key or tool in response. Eventually, you end up with a working key or tool which opens the lock. So at DerbyCon, DOSman had an impressioning workshop where he sat down with people and showed them how to impression a key. I think we might have demonstration. No, we don't have demonstrations of it. Anyways, so you take a blank key, you put it in the lock. Maybe the lock's like on a door or being held by a vise. You put the blank key in with a pair of vice grips. You move the key each direction. You pull it out and you look at the indentions. You take a file, so Pippin files typically used, and you go and you file each location down, and you go and you do it again until there's no more marks. Eventually, you're going to crank it one way or the other, and the lock's going to open up. You clean each location up, and now you got a key that's going to open that lock, go through it on your key cutter, and make duplicates to your heart's content. So it's a lot of fun. It can damage a lock. It probably will damage a lock like the first couple of times you try it. Tube locks, they work exactly like any pin tumbler lock. The pins are just in a different orientation. They're staring right at you. Typically known, on soda machines, coin-operated like laundry machines and things like that. People consider these high security. The only reason they're high security is they look different, and people don't want to pay the $80 for the bypass tool to get into them. You can still use a normal set of lock picks to get in. Just takes a little bit of determination and skill. And if you've got those two things, you're probably not inclined to knocking over Coke machines for a few dollars and change. So there's many varieties. There's a 7-pin, all the pins exposed simultaneously through the keyway, and this is what the tool looks like. We do not have any for sale right now because they sell quickly. You can find them online, but they're all going to be probably like between $60 or $80. We give them to you at the low price of $60 to $80, depending on how we feel. And you don't like the high price, just go make something. The way that it works, the feelers, basically the small biddings on the side there, they have tension on them. That retaining screw on the front, that is actually what's causing the tension on it. When I use them, the way that I do it, I go push them all the way up, push the end of the tool onto the table, level those out against the tube, twist the retaining screw. Not all the way, but make it snug, get it into the lock, and then rotate back and forth and up and down, and then pull it out. and they should all now be set to the depths of where the pins were binding. And then I twist it down all the way, and I go back in the lock and just operate it as a normal key. So it's not as easy as it sounds. It definitely takes a little finesse because you're causing sets. You're putting tension on it, and you're trying to get the keys to bind from a different orientation using a different tool. It is lockpicking. It's not just using a ready-made bypass tool to get in. So there's a demonstration of how it's done. I guess I could have just played the video. It's been years since I've actually used the slide deck, so I apologize. There he is, wiggling it around to cause sets. Oh no, he actually opened it right then. Okay, cool. There we go. I love that padlock, by the way. It's awesome. So foil impressioning. So that is a dimple lock. The pins, so to speak, are actually dimples on the side of the lock. Instead of being up and down, they're on the sides, and the keys right there have depressions on them that interact with the dimples on the side and allow you to open them up. So they operate just like a normal lock. Bitting is drilled into the side of the blade rather than along the edge. So here is, what? Okay, so it's not going to play. So I'm going to go back and explain a bypass method for dimple locks. So you get to a dimple lock that you're not sure of. You get a blank for it that fits in the keyway. You drill it out, and so the last key on the illustration is one that's been drilled out. You get a length of foil. You wrap it around the key, and you put it in the dimple lock, and you just give it one of these numbers, moving it back and forth, and the foil's only going to go as far as as it needs to bind the pins, and then you just turn the lock and open it up. And so dimple locks are irritatingly expensive, and people put them on things that they want to keep super safe, and you can get into them really easy. So I really wish the video would play. Oh well. Because I've got that, I've got a video in the corner on the little black display of the foil exploit with dimple locks, and it's like lasts all of 30 seconds, but it's a lot of fun to watch. So more advanced lock features. So lots of companies offer high security locks, and there are some true high security locks out there. Others just kind of like throw the label on it and do a bunch of smoke and mirrors to make you think that it's a tough lock. And I can show you some examples of those behind the counter. I can rummage up some really stupid looking locks that are pick like anything else. Some got difficult keyways. Narrow warding makes it so it's difficult to insert certain tension wrenches, and that's where having a variety of tension wrenches is nice if you're going to be picking a variety of high security locks. Unusual mechanisms that require specialty tools or out-of-the-box thinking. So we have some that don't have pins at all. Like Abloy makes locks that are they're called disc detainer locks. Instead of pins, they've got a series of rings with notches cut in them. And so an Abloy key is very specific. And when you look at it, it's got a series of notches cut along the key. It works like a cam, basically, and you go in there and it turns all the rings to a certain direction, allows you to get into the lock. And so we've got a bypass tool for Abloy. Don't ask me to demo it. I don't have the attention span for that, and I've never picked one. So other unusual locks, we have a video demonstration of a lock called an EVA MCS. It's actually a magnetic lock. It looks a lot like a dimple key, but instead of dimples on the side, there are magnets and the poles are turned to certain degrees. And then the lock has these magnetic wheels on the inside and a sidebar mechanism on the top. So you have to interact with two things. When you put the key in the lock, you're interacting with the sidebar, and then you're rotating these magnetic wheels on the inside of the lock certain degrees. And then when everything's set, it allows the mechanism to turn and open. It is irritating that there isn't a bypass tool for them, and a lot of people claim to have had the bypass tool at one time or have one designed, and they're just not showing it off. It's like the unicorn of lock sport right now, or has been for a long time. So the Schlage Everest is a very reasonable security lock. I like it a lot, and one of its distinctive factors is the logo cut in the side. So when you see that, you'll know that it's an Everest lock. Everest adds a taste of high security to an ordinary lock. And the way that works is it's got a side pin that requires special attention. So let's see. I'm trying to think here. It's been a long time since I've done anything with these. The what? Picks like a... Oh, yeah. Okay. So the thing to remember about the Everest is that it picks like a regular lock, but requires insertion of a tool into the rear of the lock to depress the Everest pin. So the Everest pin in an Everest lock is just a separate external mechanism to the rest of the lock. All you got to do is get your long hook back there and manipulate it and open it up. 5 minutes? All right. I think I can make it through. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't know that. Oh, you guys don't... That is boring as heck. I'm not even going to pretend. Let's get into weird things. Knox boxes. So these are typically boxes that are stored on the outside of facilities, so emergency personnel can get in there and get in when they need to get in. So I went and bought a car, and they have the equivalent of these on the outside of all their cars with this weird little key with a button cell battery on it, and you press it and it operates a little solenoid, and the car keys are inside. So it's like, so the lot porters and things like that can move the cars around after hours and just put them back in the box and leave. They're really silly, and if you've got like a wire and a AA battery, you can drive a new Volkswagen today. Yeah. And so, yeah, they're funny. So, some are cell-controlled, like have SIM card in them, and you can call them and unlock them remotely and things like that. Realtors have been getting in on the game lately for that. You can even have a new house if you know what you're doing. Medco keys are really interesting. They look like a pin tumbler lock, and they act like a pin tumbler lock, except the pins have grooves cut in them, and they have to rotate certain degrees before moving up and down. So if you look at a Medco lock from straight up and down, you notice that there's angled cuts in them. They interact with those pins. And so there's a tool called a Medicoder. It looks about like that. We don't have any, I believe, for sale, but we do make them occasionally, and they're a lot of fun to use. So I'm trying... Huh? Oh.
I don't know if you can see it on the webcam or not. No. You probably can't. Never mind.
No.
There's nothing to show.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
So that's right. So I got representation of Medco locks if you want to look at them. And I think that was it. So yeah, please come to Lockpicking Village if you want to hear me drone on about lockpicking. I'd be more than happy to do that. There's other guys over there that would be really happy. We actually have an expert, David, that came. He drove quite a bit. Pretty far, but he's really good at like all the esoteric lock stuff. So like if you want a primer and just some weird shit, you need to go and hit David up. So he would be really appreciative. The last thing I would mention is we're going to have another lockpicking challenge at some point that involves electrocution. Oh, no, muscle stimulation, not electrocution. So myself and Sporus are going to hook ourselves up and try to make it through a few locks while Dave operates the panel and shocks the crap out of us. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, guys.